The Louisiana Restaurant Association presents Conversations in the COVID Crisis, a special edition podcast to capture the stories of our industry during the most unprecedented of times. Now, here are your hosts, LRA President and CEO Stan Harris and Vice President of Communications, Wendy Warren.
We're back. Stan and Wendy are here today on episode 11, and we are still covered up with phone calls, but the topic has changed a little bit. Stan, you want to tell me about it?
Yeah, we've pivoted from how do I get operational and what can I do as far as capacity and social distancing to what do I do now if I have an employee who reports a positive case. And that's been a great deal of what we've taken on the last 7 to 10 days is trying to provide some guidance on that. And I believe we've just received some information from the Restaurant Law Center nationally. And obviously we've been sharing other information from the CDC and the Department of Health on best practices and how to deal with it. But, you know, in reality, not moving to phase 3 was disappointing, but it wasn't unexpected.
No.
You know, if we go back and we look at where we were as we were trying to approach phase 1, everyone was engaged in hygiene. That's hand washing and using hand sanitizer if that's not available, and sanitation, keeping surfaces extra clean and wiping down chairs and tables and any items that a guest might touch, like a menu or using a disposable menu. And then just paying attention to mask compliance and those things that are really important for protecting your health and the health of others. It doesn't matter where you sit on the political spectrum. If wearing a mask can keep you alive, I think it's a real small thing for you to undertake. And if you're a guest coming into a restaurant, we ask you the same thing, to mask up. It's just something that's out of respect to those folks, those frontline workers that are serving you and trying to deliver your food and your drink to you. And we just want to keep our state and our members as healthy as possible.
Yeah, and that's a good point. You know, wearing a mask into a restaurant, and if you get up from the table to go to use the lavatory, is not, you may pass someone. This thing has a mind of its own, COVID. So we're not, any mitigation efforts that we're doing, as Dr. B, you said the other day, is not 100% effective. So these combination of things, hand washing, masking, and sanitizing, social distancing, those are the things that we can do to protect ourselves and our family, because we don't want to be bringing it home.
You see photographs on social media of gatherings, and look, this is the time of year where people typically get together. You know, in May it's Mother's Day and it's graduations, and in June it's weddings, and so all of a sudden you have this pent-up demand. But, you know, as I was saying a little bit earlier, it's probably interesting for us that we don't want to mistake activity for progress.
Yeah, I heard you say
you know,
that.
we also don't want to misplace impatience as enthusiasm. You know, I mean, there is a lot of impatience to get things back to normal, or the new normal that people keep referring to. But realistically, we've got to get businesses, especially where we're serving the public, to still follow those practices they were serving in phase 1. We may have a little different approach on social distancing or capacity, but not allowing people to congregate as a group and keeping that social distancing. It's not normal. It's not what people are used to, but it's something that they're going to have to follow, and the restaurant or the bar is going to have to enforce if they want to stay in this phase.
Now, one thing that happened, we got phase 2A guidance regarding live music, and that got walked back.
Yeah, the phase 2A was something that the fire marshal was working on to try to accommodate some requests that came from one of the parish leadership folks and was looking to what could we do if we wanted to do live music. Live music is allowed outside. You can operate it under a covered area as long as it doesn't have walls or sides to it. And obviously with our weather here and the weather we had today in New Orleans and across the state, sometimes our weather's not as conducive for outdoor activities as we get into the heat of the summertime. But it was not anything that was connected between LDH's approval and the fire marshal, and neither one of these parties had vetted the other, and we had a circumstance on the governor's press conference last week where LDH was asked that question, and their answer was no live inside entertainment, and that was in direct conflict to what this said. But if you drill through the 2A a little bit more, the 2.5 a little bit more, there were some very specific things that you would be able to affirm and put into your application to the state fire marshal, and at the same time they had to come out and inspect that to make sure you were compliant with it. So it wasn't so much as saying that I'm going to wipe it down and keep it clean. There were some very specific things with your HVAC system or a virus removal system or any of those antibacterial approaches that you had to invest in to be able to submit it. I'm disappointed for those who might have taken the effort to go through that submission and then not able to get their end result. That was a breakdown. They've admitted it. They've walked it back. And that's what happens sometimes. As someone told me on one of these task force calls not long ago, it's like we're flying the airplane, but we're still building it at the same time.
Yeah. We're working on the left wing, but the right wing, God knows.
Yeah, so we're only turning in one direction.
And we're in a circle right now.
That's right.
So there's been some activity on some funding sources coming down the pipe. And I wanted you to kind of talk about that and kind of tease it out because starting in July, we should have some definitive information to share with the members.
Yeah, one of the bills that passed that was the work of the Legislative Economic Recovery Task Force, and it was Senate Bill 189 that turned into the Main Street Recovery Program. And this was a central piece of legislation that was seeking to direct $300 million of the CARES Act money, of the $1.8 billion that came down, to help small businesses. And it's dedicated to businesses that are under 50 employees. There's an array, a list of requirements that go underneath that. You have to be Louisiana-based, majority owned by Louisianans and things like that. But starting in July for about 3 weeks, the first 3 weeks are going to be exclusive to those businesses in Louisiana that did not get PPP or economic injury recovery loans, disaster loans. The program's being run by the treasurer of our state, John Schroeder, and John is soliciting bids right now from firms to be able to administer this grant program, but it is a grant. It's not a loan, and I don't want anybody to confuse it with the Federal Reserve's Main Street lending program. These are two different things. At the state level, it's up to $15,000. Now, after 3 weeks, by the way, if you did receive PPP money or EIDL loans, that will reduce the amount of the grant that you could achieve. So you'll still be able to apply, but the first 3 weeks by statute are dedicated to the people that didn't have any other funds or any other program that they could attach.
So tell me about the Federal Reserve program.
The Federal Reserve program, I had a call with their Fed governor today, and their explanation is they're trying to get this socialized as quickly as possible. It's something that big businesses understand very easily. And what they're asking us to do is work with them to create a small business approach for businesses under $3 million a year in revenue or businesses under 200 employees so that we can help them roll this out. It's a 5-year term. It has very favorable interest rates, but it is a loan and there's no forgiveness on that.
Okay. Yeah, that's something that we've gotten I would say our minds got a little warped about what loans are now that they introduce forgiveness in the CARES Act. I think we have to remind ourselves
I still think that from the forgiveness standpoint, if you look at PPP and that what it was for, it provided some low-cost immediate liquidity with a 2-year payback. Now, if you get your money after June the 5th, you have a longer payback. And that's just what happens when you pass legislation as quickly as these bills were passed. You know, as we've talked about in other podcasts, the path of normal legislation at the federal level could take up to a year to get it implemented. We not only got it implemented, we got it paid out in under a month. So at times it's going to take additional guidance to do that. And then, unfortunately, too, is why we got the PPP Flexibility Act passed, is that there were some of the things in the original bill that took another statute to change them. It couldn't just be done by rule or by department guidance. So they've worked very well together on a bipartisan basis. I don't know, as we move closer to the election, how much more we're going to see in relief from the federal government, but we're always hopeful that they'll come up with something that's worth taking a look at.
Agreed. Is there anything else that's on your mind that you want to share with the membership right now?
No, I think that, you know, we have to continue to work together as an industry to promote best practices in this hygiene and sanitation and worker safety. And we've got to recognize, too, that it's going to mean sometimes with positive cases that you may have to close for a day or so to do a deep cleaning or to readdress your practices and see how you can affect better social distancing in the workplace. And, you know, just be part of the solution. That's part of this that I think that we overlook sometimes. We're thinking that the Department of Health or the governor's office, the state fire marshal, or some regulator has all the answers. And the frustrating part to me is, and this is probably more personal than anything, is we have so many people that seek to be compliant, and they get highly frustrated when non-compliant people operate and do it with no regard for what the impact is. And then if there's any retribution that comes down, it goes to everyone.
Yeah. The one bad apple.
You know, we're asking folks to be good citizens, to be good neighbors, and to continue to work together so that we can deal with this COVID crisis. We're on day number 102 since restaurants were closed in the state, and now we're back reopening. Just a couple of things to mention. We don't have a vaccine. And we don't have a medical treatment, a pharmaceutical treatment for this yet. So, and as the governor said in his press conference, it appears that the heat and the rain don't seem to knock it down. And while we're probably done with dealing with COVID, COVID's not done with dealing with us. Yeah. So it's where we are. It's what we're going to have to deal with. And like it or not, it's probably here to stay for a while.
Agreed. Well, thank you so much for your time today.
Always a pleasure. Thank you.
Our next guest on the podcast is Ken Veron, owner of Cafe Vermilionville in Lafayette, on the Acadiana board of the LRA, and also he's an industry rep to the state board. How are you doing today, Ken?
I'm doing great, Wendy. How are you?
It ended up being a beautiful day. It was the last 2 days have been really rainy, and you know now the sun's peeking out, so I'm a little my mood's a little better. What about you?
I'm all about that positivity. Yes, the sun is popping out, and Seattle is going away.
Yes, exactly.
But you know, hey, we're trying to bring the sunshine. You know.
So, what's going on at Cafe Vermilionville? Are you open? Are you doing takeout? Like, what's the deal over there?
We are open, and we opened up at the beginning of Phase 1. May 15th was our first date.
Okay.
And we were quite fortunate that we have an outdoor space that we do live music in the spring and fall. And so, you know, that was kind of our objective right when we got back, was to go ahead and figure out how to get some more people in and utilize that space. Mm-hmm. So we spread out and we masked up and we threw some great concerts for the first few weeks of Phase 1. And as it got a little, you know, warmer, we kind of tapered away from that a little bit. Also, kind of our special events business has kind of been able, you know, kind of taken away from that ability to do that as well as per capacity hindrances. So we're kind of a unique restaurant anyway. But we're coming back. I mean, we just felt like we threw some great live shows. Musicians were happy to get back to work. And the guests were very comfortable and spread out as everybody was outside in that setting. It worked out really well for us.
Good. So, that sounds good. And what about when we moved into Phase 2 with the 50%, like what what did that look like for you? Did you see an increase in consumer demand?
We did. There was a bit more demand. I think everybody was really just looking to get out, and we saw that with some of our guests coming out as our first dates out, and they were just so happy to get out and put the kids with the parents or a sitter or whatnot. So some really good connections with our customers over the past couple of weeks. They're grateful for us for doing what we're doing, and they're even more than understanding in circumstances like supply chain issues that we're definitely all having at this point. So the customers have been great, the connections have been great, and it's been a good time in the restaurant business. Really, I think everyone's just really understanding and grateful. So
you mentioned supply chain. Has that resulted in you having to limit your menu items?
It has. We're operating on different different service times as well. We're currently not serving lunch, which is something we normally did during the week. So our menu is a little bit more pointed, more so for efficiency, not necessarily for supply chain issues.
Right.
But we have all seen an increase in those costs of goods, and sometimes the availability has been pretty tough on even some of our scaled back menus. Been kind of hard to come by. Like, for instance, a couple weeks ago we couldn't find red snapper, which I thought was kind of odd. But hey, it's a whole different world at this point.
So when you say efficiency, you're talking about like kitchen staff and also social distancing, like, correct?
Well, yes. Capacity, just more of a scaled menu. For instance, we're doing 5 entrees versus 9 entrees in our dinner menu.
Okay.
Some of those were supply chain issues that we're having, some issues getting. More so, it's also cut back. We have less employees than we did, pre-COVID as well. And that was by no means of no one coming back to work. Everyone was more than willing to do that. But we just ended up with some less employees by other circumstances. Yeah. But it's more so for prep and just efficiency. And I want to just make sure that those items we're serving are prepared that day and they're the freshest they can possibly be. And I've got guys with time to be able to do it as per our new hours. Right. So that was kind of our direction. So
now you're also the chair of EAT Lafayette. Is that correct?
Correct. Yes, a couple of years now, and I basically work in conjunction with LCVC as almost a chairman of the board of directors, I guess, and the board of directors being other restaurateurs. Getting in feedback from them and bringing that to EAT Lafayette and figuring out how we can get the most out of this campaign.
Now that's the Lafayette Visitors Commission, right?
Correct. Okay. That's our tourist commission. I mean, yes. They're just working alongside. They have the entire campaign in-house, right. And they actually execute a lot of the physicalities of what we do. But in terms of my role, it's just more of a liaison to the restaurateurs in the community and finding out, hey, what's working, what's not, what can we do to make this better, and just kind of act as a spokesperson for that movement as well. And you guys have, I think Ben said earlier on a call that you guys had like 228 local restaurants participating. Yes, and that is an incredible number. Yes. Our sponsors, and Wendy, I have no idea how they did this, but they all came through, and really, I mean, our revenue and our sponsorship didn't really decline even in these very hard times. So what we did is to get the most, inclusivity, and the best thing we could do was, we offered. It's normally a $250 registration fee for each restaurant, and that collectively goes in advertising for the whole of the group. But we were able to waive that fee this year, and not only gift this to our current membership, but we're also able to grow and include every locally owned independent restaurant in Lafayette. And that's where that 227 number comes in. Whereas last year we were probably around 120. Wow. Now, but we were able to get this together and offer them, no buy-ins, and really create a movement more than just, of an awareness campaign. I mean, we're really taking hyper-local to the streets this year and trying to really just instill in our consumers, hey, the local guys need you more than ever. And what are you guys were talking also about not only the campaign to inspire diners to eat out, but also featuring what you guys are doing from a safety measure standpoint as well to make sure that when the diners get there, they're
they feel safe and they want to stay and enjoy themselves?
For me, that is the most important part of what we do as restaurateurs at this point, is making our guests feel safe. And, we're still all trying to figure it out as per our different, restaurants and what the best way to do that is. But, we really are just trying to highlight the people who are doing exceptional work in those realms. And Ben and I kind of discussed, we may do a video feature where we go out to each individual restaurant and feature someone this week. Hey, these guys are doing a really great job here.
Yeah.
And, and really kind of trying to focus more on the positivity.
Exactly.
There's enough negative out there.
There sure is.
This hats off to all you all at the LRA at the state level. I mean, we had more information coming down our pike than any other industry that there was. And, I had friends in other industries that I referred them to the LRA site,
oh, wow.
when it came to matters like PPP and things like that. So I would like to see us be able to offer that to all of the EAT Lafayette members as well. So I'd like to see us grow in that direction too, with that resource in place as well.
That's one of the things that we did during this time, is that we helped every restaurant that called, and we provided and still do provide all of that information at LRA.org. It's not behind a paywall, and it will live there as long as it's needed. And that's just, it was an avalanche of information. That's what someone called it. And at the bottom of the hill was, Stan and Wendy and my team, trying to make sense of it and figure out how to organize it to share it with everyone. So we're still getting an enormous amount of information. We're just, this week it's about, what happens when my employee tests positive, and, what about contact tracing in my business and those kind of things. So we're preparing our e-newsletter right now for tomorrow, and that's the content that I'm working with, and that's because that's what the members are calling with questions about right now, and just, restaurants in general. So we do listen. So if you have any suggestions for us, send them our way. We're wide open for comments. Well, thank you for spending a few moments with us and telling us your story and what's going on in your neck of the woods. And I'll be in touch soon with, to get an update from you, and hope that everything with the campaign goes great for you guys in Lafayette. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much for having me, Wendy. It was a pleasure. You have a good afternoon.
You too. Before we leave you today, we want to share an exciting announcement with you, and Stan's going to do the honors.
Yeah, it's exciting for us because we've had a long-term partnership with Lieutenant Governor Billy Nungesser and Louisiana Seafood, which is under the Lieutenant Governor's office. And as many of you know, Lieutenant Governor Nungesser is a tireless promoter of tourism and hospitality and our attractions and features and festivals. And he came to us a month or so ago and asked if we could find a home for some budget money that he had left in this fiscal year. We were able to take that with our team, and we created a digital billboard outdoor approach, a social media approach, and a radio and television approach that will be spent in all the major markets across the state. We're very, very thankful to Billy and Sam Carroll, the director of Louisiana Seafood, for working with our team to stand this forward. And we've seen the first run of the ad for the television side, and it looks fantastic with great images of Louisiana Seafood, and just reminding people that, hey, we need to get you back out in our restaurants. So it's a great partnership with the Lieutenant Governor, the Louisiana Restaurant Association, and Louisiana Seafood, and we're sure glad that he thought enough of us to let us have this to spend to support our industry.
Well, now you get to hear it first here, so take a listen.
Louisiana restaurants are open and ready to serve you. This is Lieutenant Governor Billy Nungesser. Satisfy your cravings with world-famous Louisiana seafood. All the flavors you love, prepared by our world-famous chefs, and fresh from our bountiful waters to your plate. So head over to your local favorite restaurant and be sure to ask for authentic Louisiana seafood. Brought to you by the Louisiana Restaurant Association and Louisiana Seafood Board. A perfect pair.
Thank you for listening to the LRA's Conversations in the COVID Crisis. If you have a story idea, email communications@lra.org. Visit www.lra.org for the latest on COVID-19 resources for restaurateurs. And follow us on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Instagram. Until next time, stay safe, everybody, and remember, we at the LRA are working harder than ever for Louisiana's restaurant industry.